Man, look at that. Like 2 o'clock on the nose, the credits fade out. We're sitting here dancing. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Sunday show on the line. I'm Matt. Paul is joining me this week. How are you, man? How you been?
I am, all things considered, outside of everything else existential, I am good.
Yeah, it's a difficult. So for 20 years, I've been hosting call-in shows. I've been engaged in, secular atheist activism for a little bit longer than that. And I'm also weird. And when people are like, how are you doing? My brain always wants to give the honest answer. Like,
right, me too.
Somebody's like, hey, how you doing? So I could complain, but I won't. Oh, let's not bother with that. Or, hey, I'm doing pretty good. Or there's a couple things here. I'm doing awful in many respects. Like there's no way you can be a reasonably informed individual in the world today and be doing well, I think.
Agree.
But watching, like, for example, Trump and then with Zelensky in the Oval Office, I'm baffled. But I actually unfriended someone on Facebook today that I've known since high school. And we were not close. We did not interact. We were just, we're part of the same kind of youth group thing. But today they shared a link from someone describing, or I guess post hoc rationalizing what took place in the Oval Office and claiming that Trump and J.D. Vance really, really, really understood the issue and all of the subtleties involved, such that they knew Zelensky was going to make some sort of emotional appeal to the American people. And so they arranged beforehand to not only get a specific reporter in, but a reporter in to ask a specific question that's potentially problematic, and then do this entire turn, because Zelensky wants Ukraine to be a part of NATO and get the protections of NATO. And we can't allow that. And my first question when I read that in the thing was, why not? I mean, I don't understand why not, but that what they're telling the right is we can't allow that to happen. So Trump brilliantly came up with a plan for mineral rights, because if the United States is tied to Ukraine's mineral rights, then Russia can't keep invading because now they're coming against the United States. And then you don't need NATO protection because you have the mineral rights protection. It's a brilliant plan. And you know what? If in fact that were the best way to secure safety for Ukraine, that would be, if that were the best plan, that would be a fine plan. The thing is, it's a stupid plan if you think that Zelensky, when you put him on TV, is going to pull some bullshit. Because you know what? You don't have to put Zelensky on TV. You do not have to sit the man down in the Oval Office next to the President of the United States. You do, if you think that he's being dishonest or whatever else. If it turns out you have the best plan for peace for Ukraine, and you and Zelensky, Trump and Zelensky did not sort this out ahead of time before you went on TV, then you're an idiot. If you thought he was going to turn on you on live TV and you put him on live TV anyway, then you're an idiot. Because the plan that you had, if in fact it were the right plan, it would be very easy to make that case not on TV and not after the fact, and where you could stand up in front of the world's leaders on the world stage and say, look, here's what we did. Here's what we offered. It's clear he doesn't want peace. I don't know why you guys are standing with him. But the opposite is what's happened. We are not only approaching language about the potential of civil war or World War III. The president of the United States is using the words World War III in the Oval Office in a discussion with someone who's desperately trying to save his people from an aggressive attack.
Right.
And yet my friends are sharing this and they're like, wow, look how smart Trump is. No, Trump is the stupid person's friend of a smart person. Trump is the rich friend of a stupid person's smart person. And that's Elon, because Elon's also stupid, but he's the stupid person's smart person. Anyway, it's so strange to be sitting here going, hey, how are you?
Right.
I'm a hot mess. How are you?
I've actually trained my close family to not ask, how are you? Because my reaction is always to give the honest answer. So it's always like, can you ask some other question? Because that one gives me angst.
But yeah, it was frustrating to be sitting there going, granted, yes, I knew you back years and years ago when we were in high school. And no, you were not the sharpest spoon in the drawer then. But it's very clear what's happening. There are people who don't understand how things work, who have been convinced by media propaganda to support Trump. And then when they see Trump do something that the rest of the world points at and says, that was vile and disgusting and vicious, and this puts the United States in with BRIC and fascists and authoritarian regimes, and puts the United States in direct opposition to NATO and Europe and all of our traditional alliances. When the rest of the world is pointing and saying that, then the people who just went along with Trump because they hate the woke, they have to then say, ooh, was this a bad idea? Was this actually a dumb plan? And so they get somebody who's just smart enough to do a post hoc rationalization and say, all of this stuff that I'm rationalizing after the fact, Trump thought of all that ahead of time. This was the brilliant plan. And then at the end of the day, you have to say, okay, you were so stupid that not only do you think that they planned all this out, but that it was a good idea to plan all of this out. I mean, we're doomed.
I mean,
Paul.
if you want to bring that around to theism, I often find that there are very, very, very intelligent theists out there, and because they're so smart, they can create for them narratives similar to that, right? That God is playing this 5D chess that we're not seeing, right? It's that same, and I think probably some atheists and non-believers on the same side who we if you're intelligent, you can end up constructing something very fortified walls around a false belief. That is unfortunately something humans can do.
One of my favorite quotes from Michael Shermer, and don't get me wrong, I understand there are potentially problematic things related to Shermer and otherwise. I'm not, but he wrote, smart people are incredibly good at rationalizing things that they came to believe for not smart reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that quote from him, which I probably butchered paraphrasing it, has always stuck with me, because in many ways, you're like, oh, talk to magicians. Is it easier to fool a room full of adults or a room full of kids? In many ways, in many circumstances, it's way easier to fool a room full of adults because they already think they're smarter, and they have rigid structures built in about how the world works and what is or isn't a trick. And we think we're so smart that if, somebody showed me this trick before, it worked this way. And then when you show them, oh, wow, there's no mirror, there's no wires, there's no, whatever, and you found a completely different way to do it. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's magic. Whereas, the kids are just like, no, it's that. They expose the problems with magicians engaging in sort of too perfect scenarios where the trick is so good that there's only one explanation for it. Seeing that in looking at the discussions about politics and how do you tell if you're being lied to, we have more access to more information than ever. We have an internet full of information and misinformation, and we have not built a populace with the tools that can adequately help enough of them distinguish the difference between good information and bad information. We're doomed.
Agree.
I think we might be doomed, but we have calls, and let's, some of them may think we're doomed, some of them may not. We will always prioritize theist callers. So if you're someone who believes in a God, if you think there's a really good reason to believe in a God, call in and let us know. Paul and I would like to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And if there's, because we both used to believe, we both had pretty robust God beliefs. And this is something that we not only took serious as believers, but we still take it seriously. There are plenty of people who, once they find their way free from religion, they're like, yeah, screw all that. What a waste of time. I'm going to go live my life. But Paul and I are here saying, hang on, if we're wrong, we'd like to know. And if you're wrong and you'd like to know, we'd like to help. So if you have what you think is a good reason to believe that something supernatural happened, anything supernatural, but gods in particular are fine, because that's where we end up having a lot of the conversations. Call in and make your case. The worst that can happen is we reach an impasse where you think you've demonstrated your case, but we don't. And we think we've rebutted your case and you don't. But if you present a really good case for God, and we provide what we think is a rebuttal type response, if you are not convinced that we've rebutted it, maybe hundreds of thousands of people who watch those clips will also be convinced that we haven't rebutted it, and you will have done your duty to help spread what you think is the truth. And the only way it goes wrong for you is if you don't actually have good arguments and good evidence, and you present those and wind up helping us lead people away from religious belief. But it should be pretty straightforward. I did a video. What's that?
I was going to say, we might be the swine you don't want to throw your pearls before, but not everyone listening are swine like Matt and I. So definitely.
Yeah. And when you present the argument and evidence that knocks down the atheists that have been doing this for decades, you get to use that to further your cause for truth. I mean, if we're wrong, there are people who think that Paul and I do this show because we want to mock believers. There are people who think that we want to get the most ridiculous religious advocates to call in, make them look foolish and feel embarrassed, send them on their way so that we can beat our chests about how we just keep beating these religions, they just don't understand anything and they'll believe whatever. I would agree that is frequently what happens, in the sense of, to date, we haven't had a good case presented. There have been very few individuals who have actually done well in the conversations on these shows, but there are some. There are some repeat callers that we've had over the years where we've had really good conversations where we get closer and closer to some sort of clarity on why we don't agree. So let's see if we can manage to do any of that. Calls are lining up. We have theists and atheists calling in. But because she was the first caller, Amanda from New York, pronouns are she, her, has some sort of jigsaw style thought experiment we're going to go over. Amanda, what's going on?
Well, thanks for having me, Matt and Paul.
Welcome.
Okay, so my thought experiment is basically on the premise that people who are believers or claim to be believers, they don't really believe as much as they say or claim or believe that they believe. So if you took, say, a mega church pastor, pick whoever you like, Kenneth Copeland perhaps, some jigsaw-style nut job captures them, sticks them in an escape-proof room somewhere really remote, say, the woods somewhere where nobody ever goes, and it's going to be a really, really, really cold night, sub 40 degrees, 40 below. They are trapped in this room. They can't get out. There are 2 boxes in this room. One contains their holy book of choice, say, a really old, sacred, precious Bible, in the case of, a Christian religion. And the other box, there is a cell phone. There is cell phone reception in this area. But they're so far away from anyone, they can't call for help with just their voice. They'd need the phone to get out. To open the book box, with the Bible, would destroy the cell phone. If they open the box with the cell phone, the only way to do it is to say, it's a voice lock, there is no God. That will release the cell phone and destroy the Bible, say with fire.
I hate to do this, but all I can do is look at this as myself when I was a believer. I would absolutely say there is no God in order to open the box to get the cell phone to make the call. But that has nothing to do with whether or not I'm convinced there's a God. I don't need a really old sacred Bible or a brand new Bible in a box. Neither the old Bible nor the new Bible will do anything at all to help me escape. I don't need a Bible for anything. When I'm a believer, I have a direct line to God. I have the ability to pray. The Bible is an absolutely useless bit of paper it has nothing to do with whether or not you believe in a God or whether or not there's a God to help you. So I think there's a problem with your scenario where not only does it not prove whether or not someone actually believes in a God, but for people who do actually believe in a God, why would we give a shit if there's a Bible in a box?
Well, it's kind of a demonstration that they will not choose to rely on prayer, rather will call for help using technology.
No, it doesn't. No, it's not. Amanda, that's the point. I can be praying the entire time. I can be praying while I say there is no God. I can be praying while I'm on the cell phone trying to call for help. There's absolutely nothing about this scenario that in any way demonstrates I don't believe in a God.
But you didn't let me finish and say that they're being recorded and that, Mr. Megachurch Pastor will be shown video to his congregation.
Okay.
That he said.
And that's easy to...
That doesn't change a thing. You don't think if Paul or I were a megachurch pastor, we couldn't stand up in front of the congregation and explain how simply a Bible is completely irrelevant, how this entire scenario was constructed to try to design to show something that it didn't show and can't show. And throughout the entire process, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob stood beside me in there and allowed me to get access to the cell phone and be redeemed. What difference does it make what I utter on some camera for some sick psychopath trying to demonstrate this? At no point was my faith even remotely shaken, and at no point was this demonstrated. Your scenario, there's no more context you can add to the scenario. It cannot demonstrate what you think it can demonstrate.
Coerced statements aren't accepted, in anywhere, right? So that would absolutely be a coerced statement, and God wouldn't care. God doesn't actually care about the words. The God I believed in as a Christian, let me put it that way, wouldn't care about the words. If you could somehow make this a scenario, it doesn't matter about the Bible at all. I had most of the New Testament memorized, so I didn't need the papers. You need the scenario where actually you'd have to force someone to stop believing, somehow investigate their heart to know that in order for this box to open, you'd have to stop believing in God. But I don't know how you'd create that, right? Like,
Right.
So,
your scenario is, as Paul was pointing out, just a complicated thing of saying, if I put a gun to your head and said, I'll kill you unless you deny Jesus, you're going to deny Jesus. And I'd have done that as a believer in a heartbeat.
I'm sure you're correct, and I didn't think through my thought experiment as well as I thought I had.
It's a good thing to be going down, a route like that, to see like, oh, when push comes to shove, are you going to go see a doctor or are you going to pray? And the problem is you're going to do both.
Yes. Quite right.
Keep working on it.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda. We'll see you later.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Is there a specific email I should contact for a? I called the line a couple times, specifically the Transatlantic call show, to get some help with a book I was writing, and it's kind of a thank you. I wanted to send you, or as many of the line hosts would want, copies of my first book. So I was wondering if there's an email I can contact to arrange such a thing.
Honestly, I don't know.
Arden at Q&A line or contact at Q&A line. Either one of those.
Yeah, I know we have emails. Arden at QAline.com works, and contact at QAline.com works. I just don't know if we have, the ability to take delivery of books and stuff like that. But we might.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had any P.O. boxes that any of the hosts manage.
I do not currently have P.O. box set up, but Jimmy might, and we probably should. I just don't. Cool. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a tempting it's a tempting line of thought to get into. If you really believe, what if you had a gun to your head? And as you pointed out, that sort of coerced statement. I mean, if God knows your inner thoughts, is God going to punish you for lying to someone and saying you don't believe when you really do? I mean, if you think there's a God that's going to punish you for saying you don't believe when you really do in order to save your life so that you can do more of what that God wants, I mean, that's just weird. It doesn't make any sense.
Look at Peter, right? Peter denied 3 times, right? And went on to be the rock, the pillar of the church. Although that is an example in the Bible, both of that God does take that stuff seriously, but that's not the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit that is the unforgivable sin. That's the sin of actually not believing. Again, if we're putting our Christian hats on right now, which why do we have to always do that? That's weird.
It's strange. So we've got some theists calling in, and we're going to take some calls. Hopefully there's some people that are going to demonstrate the truth of their claims, or at least make it so we can have a conversation and understand parts of it. Trent's calling from Ohio, proud to him, wants to make a historical and spiritual case for Christianity. Hey, Trent, how are you?
What's up? So I have a unique argument. Jesus actually died on an eclipse. This kind of proves that he's God, don't you think? And NASA actually confirmed this.
Sorry, I didn't actually understand the sentence. Can you say it again?
Okay. So Jesus died on an eclipse. This is confirmed by NASA. It was a lunar eclipse. The significance is that the moon turned red on the same day that the Messiah's blood was shed. And this could be seen...
Trent, The problem here to start with is that NASA hasn't confirmed that, and NASA cannot confirm that, because we cannot confirm that Jesus existed, lived, or died, or what date Jesus would have died if in fact he existed. The notion that you think NASA has confirmed this means that you have some standards of inquiry and investigation that aren't up to par. Like, have you tried Googling, did NASA confirm Jesus died during an eclipse? Because I think you would find some articles explaining why that's absurd.
So this is on eclipse.gsfc.nasa.gov/lehistory/lehistory.html. You can go on here on the calendar date 33 April 3rd, and then you get the significance of 3-3 Holy Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
No, I'm sorry. Trent. I realize that the government has the ability to show when eclipses occurred. There's no way to show when Jesus died.
Yeah.
So we know it was, I believe it was on Passover, so we know that it had to
No,
be
we
within-
don't.
Wait.
Trent. Go ahead, Paul. We don't know any of the things you're asserting that we know. So, and I'm going to let Paul explain it.
So what if you wanted to preface all of your statements with according to the Gospels, you could have started there at least and could have made a discussion, but neither Matt or I believe or accept that every claim in the Gospels is something that has been proven. So if you want to call it,
So how do you discern what's real and what's not real in the Gospels by your standard?
well, each person evaluates for themselves claims by claims which ones they accept. Some people accept none of them. I accept some of them based on criteria, when there's criteria of multiple attestation, particularly attestation outside of the Gospels, when there's criterion of potentially conflicting with their best interests, some of those kind of things. But I barely hold on to that there was an actual guy, that the Bible is based on. I do think that, but I mean, only tentatively. So, but that's, you don't think you called in for me to defend the non-historicity of the Gospels. You called in to tell us that NASA proved that Jesus died when there was an eclipse, when the Gospel of John and the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, and Luke actually don't agree on which night Jesus died, right? John says Thursday, the other Gospels say Friday. So it's hard for you to,
Do you understand numerology?
Do I understand numerology? Well, I understand that there are numbers, and I understand that people give. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I say something?
Yes.
So the significance of Jesus dying on April 3rd is that 4 + 3 = 7. There were 7 days of creation, 7,000 years of human history total.
Do you
Jesus
think
came on the 4,000th year?
Do you think that anyone in the first century was aware of the word April?
They divided the months. I know they divided the months. I think they divided it by 13 back then, but now we know it's 12. And then we have.
So how can your numerology of modern April 4th tell me anything? Unless you want to say it's post hoc, in which case I can say that the dating systems was invented to confirm the numerology. Why would you call in and tell me about something about April 3rd? Is that any more
because that's when people think that Jesus died?
God died on Thursday. God either died on Thursday or Friday. If God, then I should say, well, God was really Thor because Thursday is named after Thor. This is roughly the same argument, you understand?
How do you know he died on Thursday?
I'm just saying, according to the Gospels, according to John, he died on Thursday. I don't think he actually did. I think he probably died in some entirely different time and place and circumstance, but still probably crucifixion. Nevertheless, all I'm saying is that the argument about April 3rd on 33. Go ahead, Matt.
I'm just wondering,
The
Trent,
significance is also that.
Trent, stop. I don't give a shit about the significance. I want you to tell us how you confirmed the date that Jesus died. How did you confirm the exact date on which Jesus died?
So again, we have to take it on faith by what the church fathers say, and
Trent,
the
were
arguments that
any of the church fathers there?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't confirm or deny if they were there or not.
Trent, were any of the church fathers at the crucifixion?
Peter.
Wow, you have no clue what you're talking about, not even in the slightest. No church fathers were at the crucifixion. That's not the way the history of the church works. However, when you say that we have to take it on faith of what the church fathers say, none of the church fathers...
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we take everything on faith.
Trent, stop fucking interrupting me and listen.
All right, okay.
All right, okay, shut your pie hole and listen. The church fathers never say what date Jesus died, do they?
You might be right. What I was trying to say is that we take everything in our worldview.
Trent, the question was, did the church fathers ever say the date on which Jesus died? Yes or no?
Okay, I don't know, so I'm going to look it up, or you can just tell me.
The answer is no. And yet you're the one who's called in, Trent, to say that we should just take it on faith what date Jesus died because the church fathers told us. But you just admitted you don't know what the church fathers told us, which means when I asked you what mechanism you used to determine what date Jesus died, you lied.
There's lots of reasons why people think Jesus died between AD 30
Trent,
and AD 33.
I'm sorry, Trent, but we're addressing you and your lies.
And you might be right. The point I was trying to make is that we take our...
I'm sorry, Trent, but we're addressing you and your lies. Why should I engage with a liar who's calling in to defend something that they do not understand, do not have any investigative results from at all, and then when called out on their lies, continue on trying to make a point instead of acknowledging that they lied and are going to have to make a different argument? Why should I continue to have any sort of conversation with a liar at all?
Well, I have facts now. I just asked ChatGPT, so I know why people believe Jesus died on April 3rd, 33 AD, and I can point that...
Trent, you're never going to speak again on this show. I'm going to ban you by your phone number because I don't believe you. You're not a serious interlocutor. You have no clue what you're talking about, and you just admitted that while I was sitting here explaining things to you, and while Paul was sitting here explaining things to you, while you were being acknowledged and confirmed to be a liar, talking about things you do not understand and do not know, you decided that you were going to use ChatGPT to find out why some people believe that Jesus died on the date that you think. I'm sorry, Trent. You are beyond help. You are either a dishonest individual who is trolling, or you are too irrational to engage in conversation. I don't know which one it is, but I definitely do not want to be sitting here having a conversation with someone who calls in to say, I would like to make a unique historical and spiritual case for Christianity, who then acknowledges that in the middle of the conversation, they've decided to ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT, by the way, Trent, is not a reliable epistemology. You don't know what epistemology is. You don't know what a reliable epistemology is. You don't know what the church fathers said. You don't know what church history says. You don't know what we can and can't demonstrate with regard to whether Jesus existed, lived, died, or when any of these events occurred. You don't know any of it. But you think that sitting here with two individuals who debate this shit for a living, that you're just going to chat GPT your way through this. Well, I got news for you, Trent. You're not. You go off and you do your homework and you study and you build an actual case, build an actual argument based on the information that you find at ChatGPT or that you find at Wikipedia or that you find in the Library of Congress. Go off and build that case, and then you can call back and present that case when you have an understanding of it and not 1 second before. Are we clear?
Yeah, well, dude, you just
I got the yeah, Trent. You see, Trent, I know what you're doing. And that's why I led up to getting you to say yes and then immediately dropped your call because I knew you were going to try to say stuff afterwards. I don't believe that Trent's even a Christian. I don't believe that Trent is even a God believer. Trent doesn't have any knowledge or understanding of the church fathers or the history of the church. He doesn't have any understanding of epistemology. He doesn't know what the Gospels say. Paul can just run circles around Trent. And all Paul's trying to do is say, hang on, here's why we can't say that we know this. But nope, Trent's decided that ChatGPT is going to help him out. Well, if ChatGPT wants a debate with me, it can book it.
You could steel man that all day long and say, you know what, like the Catholic Church doesn't say what date Jesus died, but what you're going to come out of that argument with is on the date that I think Jesus died, it has and if that is true, it has symbolic meaning because of X, Y, and Z. And symbolic meaning isn't like evidence of things. It's just why giving someone who already believes meaning. So just if anyone else wants to call and go down that line, honestly, it still doesn't end somewhere useful to us.
It actually is worse than that. Let's imagine for a second, go back to first century Palestine. There are a number of different religious sects that are popping up. There are a number of different God men and holy men that are popping up all around the world, not just in Palestine, but this happens fairly frequently. Let's assume for a second that Jesus existed, lived, and he died, as the story says, on a day where there was a total solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, whatever it is. Let's just assume that Jesus died. Do you think that there's any likelihood that people who had maybe heard him preach would become more convinced that he was significant if he died in conjunction with an eclipse? Even just a few? Like if there's 100 people and like 5 of them believed him when he preached and 5 were like on the fence and the other 90 just didn't believe him, the 5 that were on the fence, do you think maybe one of them might have changed their mind if Jesus died with an eclipse?
Yeah.
You need to be able to address the question, which is this. If Jesus died in conjunction with eclipse, is that the reason why Jesus rose to popularity after his death? Or is that a signal that he was actually the Messiah? Is it a signal from God that he was the Messiah, or is it a coincidence that's being used to prop him up as the Messiah? How do you tell the difference? And what's really weird to me is I don't remember any verse that says the Messiah shall be born out by an eclipse. I mean, I think Matthew would have included that since he was so fond of,
You'd
inventing
think Paul going
prophecy.
preaching to other countries would have said, hey, remember that day it was really dark and we couldn't explain it? That's the day Jesus died, because everyone would remember that. And all the other countries. Anyway, yeah, it does get pretty bad.
What's even better is that we're going through this thing of NASA confirmed that there was an eclipse on the day Jesus died. No, that is the most dishonest framing of what the situation is that I can imagine. Actually, no. You could say that NASA and several other government agencies confirmed even more. The thing is that what NASA has confirmed is physical facts about reality. And then people have said, ooh, here's a date, and this is significant. And they didn't do their homework. They didn't say, ooh, if Jesus was, is Jesus popular because he happened to die with an eclipse, or did Jesus die with an eclipse because he was, the Messiah? You have to be able to show that there's a distinction there, and how. And I don't know that there's anything like that.
The only statement I can think of is that you would say that it's not because of that, but you might be able to say, well, that's now a way of saying the gospel was correct on something externally verifiable. That's the only.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not here to wear Jesus hats. I'm here to talk with folks.
Well, let's see how it goes. Random guy, pronouns he, him, from Romania, is a theist who believes Christianity is beneficial to society, and they choose to believe in God. Random guy. What if I said, I don't care if it's beneficial, I only care if it's true?
Okay, can I then explain why I personally believe in God?
This is so strange. I didn't say you couldn't explain. I'm not opposed to having you explain, but what was wrong with answering the question that I give up? Go ahead, say whatever you're going to say. I'm not here.
Okay, so I don't necessarily believe in God because I know he is real from the start. I know I cannot prove him 100%, but just like, for example, a white hole is mathematically possible. It should be able to exist, but we don't know if it exists, right? That's how I also believe in God, because he can possibly exist, right? It's not like it's impossible.
No, random guy, no. I asked you at the start of let me take a breath. I asked you at the start of this call what you would say to me if I said I don't care if it's useful, I care if it's true. And you didn't want to answer that question. Instead, you wanted to explain why you believe. But now that means I have zero latitude and zero slack to give you. So when you say things that aren't true or that are absolute bullshit, I'm going to interrupt to call them out.
But we don't know. We can't prove 100% of anything. We can't do that.
So this is the thing here, random guy. Did I say anything at all about 100% proof of anything? No, I did not. And I'm on record as being opposed to the concept that absolute certainty is attainable. As a matter of fact, I just released another video specifically about absolute certainty, but I didn't mention it in this call. You are already responding dishonestly by addressing something that I did not say. You said in the same way that white holes are possible, which I don't know what the physics demonstration of the possibility of white holes is, but let's assume for a second that physicists have demonstrated the possibility of a white hole, that this is the same way that you think God is possible. Please demonstrate that God is possible.
Well, we know that the universe had a beginning, right? And everything that had a beginning had a cause.
No, we don't know that, and we don't know any of that. But even if we knew the universe had a beginning, that doesn't tell us whether or not God is possible. You asserted that God is possible. I want you to demonstrate that God is possible in the same way that a physicist would demonstrate that white holes are possible.
Okay, well, with our understanding, there is nothing else that could cause the beginning of the universe.
No, I'm sorry.
it's
I'm
the
sorry, but that is an argument from ignorance. You don't get to say we can't think of anything else that would do it. Our understanding doesn't suggest anything else would do it. Therefore, this explanation is possible. No, even if that explanation turns out to be right, you first need to demonstrate that it is possible. And you're the one who called in and asserted that in the same way physicists have demonstrated white holes are possible, you are convinced that God is possible. So I'm going to ask you once again, demonstrate that God is possible in the same way that a physicist would demonstrate that white holes are possible.
Well, that question assumes that God cannot be possible, like at all. But
No, you're not listening, random guy. And this is what's incredibly frustrating. You are claiming God is possible. Ignore everything else that's been discussed in this entire call. You have made the claim God is possible. I am asking you for the last time to demonstrate that God is in fact possible. Go.
okay, sure. The creation of the I forgot what they're called, but what started the expansion of the universe, those did not come out of nowhere.
Okay, random guy, you don't know what anything is called, and you don't know how to make an argument, but even if the universe had to have a beginning, that does not mean that God is possible. An argument that demonstrates... Shut up! An argument that demonstrates... An argument that demonstrates... Yeah, run away, you little coward. An argument that demonstrates that God is possible must include God and possible in the premises and the conclusion. Your armchair attempt did not include the God concept or the God label, did not include that it exists or that it was possible. Instead, you just went with whatever the original stuff was that caused the expansion, that couldn't happen on its own. Therefore, God is possible. I'm sorry that you don't understand how to make an actual valid and sound argument. Paul and I could have helped with that. As a matter of fact, we were sitting here trying to help, asking you the same question over and over again. But when you get exposed as not understanding it and not having an answer and not being capable of having an answer, instead, you want to call me names and act like I'm the problem and then hang up and run away. Let me tell you guys something. Every single one of you out there that identifies as a Christian should be ready at all times to explain why you believe there's a God. You're commanded in the Bible to do that. If you're not a Christian, this may not apply to you. Because I don't know for sure to what extent Muslims and Hindus and Scientologists and Mormons are expected to be able to give a justification for it. But at a minimum, if you want to say X is possible, you need to be able to say, here's what X is. Here's how we would determine that something like that's possible. And that has happened. Therefore, X is possible. You want to say that it's possible to start a fire in the microwave with nothing but a paper towel and a chicken sandwich and some water? I can demonstrate it because we had that happen in our house earlier today. Wrap a chicken sandwich up in a paper towel, make it a little wet, put it in the microwave, put it in for too long, and that chicken sandwich becomes a charcoal briquette, but also the oils that are in there can ignite that paper towel on fire such that there's billowing smoke coming out of your microwave. Now, it's not even a surprise.
Seems oddly specific.
At some point in the past, if you would have said, I can put a wet piece of paper in this box and start a fire, people would have looked at you like you were crazy. That's not even possible. And if they were to assert that is not possible, then you would be completely in the right to say, demonstrate that this is not possible. Because the claim that something is possible needs to be demonstrated before it should be believed. And the claim that something is impossible also needs to be demonstrated for it to be believed. Until then, we are in a state where we have no idea, or we are at least unable to confirm whether the thing is possible or impossible. Now, there's a difference between possible in reality and possible in principle. And this is where a lot of people get confused. Because from a logical standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, we presume that anything is possible until such time as we have good reason to believe it's not possible. We do that as a sort of de facto rule so that we put rigorous standards on us to require us to show that X can't happen if in fact we're going to claim that. But we have those same standards for X is possible. In principle, if you want to say nobody's shown that God is impossible, therefore philosophically God is possible, I would say for certain definitions of God, you're correct. That philosophical level of possibility, all that means is we can't confirm this, and so we should remain open to it. And rather than saying gods don't exist and aren't possible, rah, 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 we need to keep challenging, pushing back on the people who claim that they are not only possible, but are in fact real. And we have callers like the last one who can't even demonstrate that God is possible. And yet, because they're convinced it's possible, they then go the extra step of believing that it's real. I think it's possible for this 20-sided die to roll a 1. It didn't. And if you would have asked me what I would have bet on whether or not it was going to roll a 1, it didn't do it again, doggone it. I would not have bet more than 20-1 because that's what the odds are on this die. We know all of that. And we don't need absolute certainty in a grand sense to know that within the local scope of calculating certainty, this is a 20-sided die, and assuming that it is generally fair, each of these numbers should come up at a roughly the same rate. And so 1 out of 20 rolls should be a 1. Damn it, that was a 20. Bummer.
Wasted it. I also am a little frustrated when someone appeals to physics and they don't seem to understand what most cosmologists think about Big Bang Theory. Just sort of go appeal at a Frank Turek level to intuition about the Big Bang. That was also a little bit frustrating. If you're going to appeal to physics, look into what cosmologists think a little bit deeper.
It makes me curious because I was willing to grant a whole bunch more leeway if he could have just answered, what if I said I only cared if it was true? Like,
right?
In simple terms, Paul, if you found out that the world would be better off, just generally better off, that the baseline level of happiness, health and happiness, all of it related, amalgamated to just one, how's life, how you doing today answer. If everybody could be 1% happier if all of us adopted the exact same religion, would that be enough of a reason? Is it enough that there's a positive benefit or a net positive benefit? Or does it matter if it's true? Because to me, to ask that question of, everybody could be 1% happier if we all just accepted Christianity or if we all just accepted Islam. First of all, I don't believe that that's true. But if it were possible that the world could be 1% happier if we were all Christian, then I think we could all be 73% happier if we were all atheists. I mean, I say that as a way to exaggerate, to make the point that you're merely looking at, ooh, will Christianity make the world better than this? Well, what are you comparing it to? You're being presumptive of that it's an improvement, or that it's, hey, I could put out the fire with an eyedropper, but I'd rather use that big hose connected to the little T-shaped thing down on the end of the street there. And you could be comparing, you're going to put out that eyedropper much faster, or that fire faster with that eyedropper than you are just by trying to squeeze water out of your eyes onto it. You're right. We should definitely pick the eyedropper over crying. But anyway,
I hope you didn't try and put out your fire with crying.
No. I was upstairs and Arden sent me a message saying, if you smell smoke, the house is not on fire. And for fun, because our love language is fucking with each other, as soon as I saw the message, I was on Twitch and I paused the stream and I was like, I'm going to go down and mess with her. So I come running down the stairs. I'm like, oh my God. And she's yelling, the house isn't on fire. I'm like, oh no, run. The house is on fire. But she's not going to leave me, even though I'm terrible. All right. Let's try and see if we can get a little further here. We've got Alfred, who's a theist calling from Texas. Pronouns are he, him. Who wants to explain why he voted from Trump from a Christian perspective. Alfred, I'll apologize in advance because Paul's Canadian, and so he's got a slight. He might not be as up to speed on some things, but here's my confusion, Alfred.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe I expressed confusion in a way that I don't know, because you're saying, I want to call in and say, from a Christian, here's why I voted for Trump.
Yes, you guys want to talk about.
Yeah. What's your primary reason as a Christian for voting for Trump?
Sure. Well, I believe that God is a God of peace. And I voted for Trump because I thought, and I still think, he'll end the bloodshed in Ukraine. I think it's immoral what's going on there. It's immoral.
Alfred, no, yes. I don't take you seriously. You've called before with this God is a God of peace, and you think Trump is the president of peace. After what happened in the Oval Office just the other day with the president of a country that's been at war for years, sitting there being berated by our president, while the rest of the world points at us, we are becoming the Christo-fascist. Trump is in the Oval Office trying to lecture Zelensky and talking about World War III. And you're calling in to suggest that Trump is going to bring peace to Ukraine because Trump is a man of peace and Trump is a man of God and God is a God of peace. Let me tell you that even if there's peace in Ukraine, a lasting peace in Ukraine does nothing to demonstrate that Trump is a man of God, that God is a God of peace, or anything else. So all you're actually saying is you think that Trump is more likely to create peace in Ukraine than somebody else, the other candidates, right?
That's one of my points.
Okay. Is Ukraine going to exist at the end of this as an independent state, or is Russia going to control it?
Well, I don't hate Russia. There's a lot of Russia-phobia on this.
Alfred, I didn't ask you if you hated Russia or anything else. You are approaching, like, once again, dishonest as fuck caller level. I asked, in your estimation, you think that peace is going to occur in Ukraine. Is Ukraine going to be controlled by Russia Is that what you consider peace?
If people aren't dying and they're not being press ganged into a war,
Yes,
they
I'm
can't
sorry,
win.
Alfred. I'm sorry, Alfred, but the lack of people dying is not the same as peace. And you can have nobody dying with an absolute dictatorial control that does not allow freedom. We're not in favor of that.
So you're willing to fight this war to the last dead Ukrainian, is what it sounds like to me. It's immoral. You know,
it's not immoral to defend yourself from invasion from others.
Some of them, it's not a choice. They're being press ganged into fighting. And many of them are leaving. The soldiers are finding 4-year-old boys.
Fuck off.
Fighting.
Alfred, yes, I will fight to the death for freedom. Get some integrity. Stop supporting fascism because you think that you're comfortable in a fascist peace. I don't care why you voted for Trump. You voted for the worst world.
Okay. May I ask a question?
I guess.
Thank you. I consider myself something of a follower of Sam Harris. I have 4 of his books, and I know that he went through his, there's no God phase, the earth isn't 5,000 years old. And I'm happy for him that he got through that phase. I've discovered Nietzsche more recently, and he went through it too, and he was much more sophisticated, so it was even shorter for him. And I mean, I don't mean an insult. It's been over 20 years, and you're still in this, there is no God. Oh, prove to me there's a God. Like, Nietzsche and Sam Harris were above all that. Why are you still in this mode? Just curious.
Because I'm better than Nietzsche or Sam.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they kind of moved on past it.
Yeah, that's their problem. Much like you've moved beyond freedom to just being okay with a status quo that doesn't allow for freedom and individuality and just allows for peace at the expense of those things. If Sam has in fact moved on to where, by the way, does Sam believe in God now, Alfred? No, he doesn't.
That's a good point.
Does Sam believe that religious arguments are valid? No, he doesn't. Does Sam believe that it's rational to believe in a God? No, he doesn't. Does Sam believe that Trump is a man of peace? No, he doesn't. Does Sam agree with you on Trump and Ukraine? No, he doesn't. So while you can point to Sam and Nietzsche and think that in your view of what you think is sophisticated, they considered this God thing and moved on and left you guys alone. The reason I'm better than Sam and better than Nietzsche is that I won't leave you guys alone. I will not stop pointing out that the theists have continually failed to meet their burden of proof and have continually made the world worse. And I'm not convinced that Sam has moved on from any of those things, but if he did, it wouldn't matter. Because while you want to pretend that you're somehow comparing and evaluating whether or not Sam is more reasonable than me, or I'm more reasonable, or if I've graduated enough, at the end of the day, you still haven't demonstrated any good reason to believe in God. And I am here talking to hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating why there isn't a good reason to believe in God, doing it over and over again, and correcting the misinformation that you try to spread that diminishes freedom and dignity. So I'm definitely better than you.
Alfred, your question is like calling up a 4th grade teacher and saying, why do you go on and on about fractions and go on and on about multiplication tables when there are so many mathematicians who do much more advanced algebra than that, and they're multiplying matrices and doing all these things and differentiating and all this stuff? And you're like, no, because we're here addressing the 5th graders is the answer to the question. We're talking to people who are not.
I like it.
Cool.
Okay. One thing I would note, you guys were talking about the existence of Jesus, and like this is established in academia. Like, there's nothing we can say with certainty about the past.
Alfred, Alfred, I don't have any problem at all with the fact that most historians think that Jesus existed.
Mhm.
I'm not a mythicist, but the mythicists have a point. And historians think that Jesus existed because when people are referred to in documents that are generally viewed as historical, as if they existed as a person, then we just presume that they were, because it's not as likely that they were made up. I'm not asserting that Jesus did not exist. I'm saying that apart from the assumption historians make, which may in fact be reasonable, there is no way to confirm that Jesus existed, that he said or did anything, that any of the miracles associated with him occurred, that he was killed and died and stored in a tomb and resurrected. None of those things are historical facts that are confirmable. When you try to suggest that us merely pointing out that mythicism cannot be falsified, that nobody's demonstrated it, when you point out that historians generally accept that Jesus existed, you are no longer engaging in things honestly, because neither Paul nor myself are mythicists, and neither of us are saying that we can confirm he didn't exist. The fact that historians use methods that generally assume people existed does not in fact confirm their existence.
Sure, and history is a different field. There's no experiment you can run to demonstrate Caesar existed. It's
correct.
Yeah.
But if in fact Jesus existed and Jesus was God, God wouldn't need us to run an experiment. God could confirm it right now to everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you
Why
perhaps
doesn't he?
weren't listening carefully. I have a whole chapter. I have a whole chapter in my upcoming book about how defending that Jesus existed. So I'm absolutely no one on this show.
There's too much.
Again,
I mean,
is
and
attempting to say
cover up. Like in the Gospels, the way the story is told is the Jewish crowds were responsible for the death of Jesus, and it looks to be like a cover up. Like the Gospel authors wanted to get along with the Romans.
Alfred, I don't need you to give me what your take is on the Gospels. I need you to present evidence that the Gospels are telling a true story.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now?
No. Well,
can you?
If you want.
I don't think I could provide anything you would accept, which is fine. I understand how you evaluate evidence.
Now, let me ask, when you say you don't think you could provide anything that I would accept, is that because you are irrational and accept things without sufficient evidence, or because my standards of evidence are higher than they should be?
I think it's a mix of both.
Okay. How could your evidential standards be too high for the claim that there is a magical being that is eternal, exists outside of space-time, exists potentially as a trinity, came down and took human form to sacrifice itself to itself while performing physics-violating miracles in order to serve as a loophole to allow us to experience an afterlife that God is in control of? How can your standards of evidence be too high for that claim?
Well, I would just note you used the word magical, and as soon as you said that, I basically tuned out because.
I'm sorry. Well, Alfred, if some being is able to violate the laws of physics, is magic not a viable description for that?
Sure. The word also has its sense, as I'm sure you know, and I don't feel like I'm dealing with an honest person when I hear that.
You are, and the reason you feel that way is because you're not an honest person. Because I just sit here and presented. Shut up and listen. I just sat here and presented you with a dilemma to address, and instead of addressing the dilemma, you once again, as you did previously, made it about me. So, when I asked you how it's possible to have standards that are too high, and your response is, well, as soon as you said magic, I tuned out. Well, go fuck yourself, Alfred, because I'm sorry that the word magic used to describe your magical God is as a bridge too far for you. Can your God, can the God that you believe in, do things that we would accurately describe as magic?
If you wanted to, sure.
Sure. If somebody turned loaves and fishes into multiple loaves and fishes, would that be magical?
Don't get so defensive.
Wait, would you
could
answer the fucking question, you dishonest prick? Would that be magical?
Why are you so mad at me? I have nothing but
Because you're a
goodwill for you.
dishonest. Because you're a dishonest prick. Because I'm sitting here. I'm going to mute you. I'm sitting here doing all the work in this conversation. I'm the one that's doing the actual thinking that is addressing, not just me, Paul is too, but I mean, with respect to you and I'm asking you very specific questions designed to expose your flawed thinking. And instead of answering them, you are attacking me personally as a red herring to hide the fact that you do not have an answer for these things, that you are in fact advocating for irrational beliefs. And every time I expose the fact that you, instead of presenting evidence, instead of presenting argument, instead of defending your claims, instead of answering the question I ask, you keep making it about me. Can you have an honest discussion, Alfred? Yes or no?
I'm sorry, it cut out. Would you say it again?
Can you have an honest discussion, Alfred? Yes or no?
Yes. Can you read my mind? What's your procedure?
Will you have an honest discussion here? Yes or no?
I have been, yes.
No, you haven't, you fucking liar. If Jesus turned loaves and fishes into multiple loaves and fishes, could that be accurately described as magical? Yes or no? Cool. Why, when I asked that question before, didn't you say yes?
Well, I told you that.
Why, when I asked that question before, did you not say yes?
I didn't like the way it was phrased.
I don't give a shit what you liked. The answer was yes. The correct answer was yes. I asked you a question where the correct answer was yes. And that's how you move the conversation forward to the next step. But you didn't like the way the question was phrased. And you don't like the fact that I used magic to describe something that can accurately be described as magic. And then when I asked you the question,
including in the Bible, by the way.
What's that?
I was including other people in the Bible referred to Jesus as having magical powers. Like, so everyone around Jesus, by the way, used the Greek equivalent word of magic. But carry on. Sorry.
Wait, no, but
no.
What?
It's fine.
Why not refer to him as Sky Daddy? I mean, that's the tone of it.
Why not refer to who as what? Why not refer to who as what?
Why not refer to God as Sky Daddy? And then, he technically could be referred to that way. Well, it's very deriding, and it's like...
Okay, Alfred, first of all, I will refer to God as Sky Daddy on occasion if I want to, and I don't care if it offends you, because you can be offended as much as you like on behalf of your fictional being until you demonstrate that he's real. Are you going to fucking put up or shut up because I think you're a dishonest fucking troll, which is why every time we try to get you to defend your belief, you stop and don't. So have an honest conversation and defend your belief, or go the fuck away. Your call.
Okay, you interrupted me. Are you going to apologize?
I hung up on Alfred. No, Alfred, I'm not going to apologize for interrupting you. I'm not going to apologize for repeatedly pointing out that I asked you questions that you refused to answer while trying to address me personally. See, because I legitimately am concerned here. The legitimate concern is that if you think that it's reasonable to believe in a God, and I don't, and we have access to the same information, one of us is wrong. And so when I ask you, is it the case that you are irrational and are accepting things based on insufficient evidential standards, or that I have standards of evidence that are just too high, and that's why I view this as irrational? One of those two is a possibility. And unlike you, Alfred, you dishonest fuck, I presented both of those and asked you which one of those two is more accurate and how you could defend it. How on earth could your standards of evidence be too high? You are deciding that there's an all-powerful creator being that exists outside of space-time that came and took human form in order to perform miracles and sacrifice himself to serve as a loophole for rules that he's in charge of. And your standard of evidence for reaching this conclusion, which not only dictates everything about everybody's life, but everything about everybody's afterlife as well. Your evidential standard is, what was that again? There's a story in a book. There's a story in a book. And historians, by default, tend to think that somebody existed if they're referred to as if they existed. Yeah, for the Bible tells me so. And your standard of evidence, by the way, Alfred, why don't you accept the other holy books that have different stories? What is your criteria that allows you to say, I'm going to accept the Bible story, but not the Quran, not the Bhagavad Gita, not the Upanishads, whatever. Pick your holy book from whatever. Why this one? You got to make the case for that. And if you could make the case for that, there is no way in hell you would have responded to my question by asserting, well, maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe I'm a little too irrational. Maybe you're a little too hardcore. Oh, you just said this is true. Is it rational to believe that that chromosome 2's fusing event that distinguishes humans from our ape cousins, is it rational to believe that that was altered by a god rather than a natural process? If I were to say to you, is it the case that I'm more irrational for believing that natural processes led to that than you are for believing that Magic Man Sky Daddy did it, since all of those things seem to bother and offend you, even though, how could I possibly offend a god? If you have evidence for something, you just show the evidence. You don't tap dance. You don't sit around and go, yeah, well, you're a big meanie. You rudely interrupted me. Are you going to apologize? No, I'm not. You rudely wasted my time, my co-host's time, my viewers' time. Did you apologize? We repeatedly asked you questions that you refused to answer and then turned around and tried to attack us personally. Did you apologize? How dare you suggest that I need to apologize for interrupting you? Interrupting you is my fucking job. All right. Leonard in England is a theist, pronouns are him, who says, shadows of light prove God. Hey, Leonard, how are you? And I think we're gonna need some explanation, because I don't know what shadows are there. Are there shadows that aren't of light? Because it says shadows of light, and I'm like, are there shadows that aren't of light?
Yes. I apologize. I wasn't sure exactly how to word it. But what I mean is, God is light. So when there's light all around, that is God. And so when like there's a shadow, because of somebody walking, that is because God is light.
Is this an analogy, or is God literally light? I just want to make sure I understand you correctly.
God is light.
How do we know that?
In John 16:32, yet I am not alone, for my Father is with me. There's always light, and that is God.
I'm sorry,
So,
but
like,
you started quoting John 16.
Yeah. Because God is light.
No. I asked you how we know that God is light, and you said because John 16:32 says, and then you quoted John 16:32, but then you added something because John 16:32 doesn't mention light at all.
No, yeah, you're right. My apologies.
But let's assume for a second.
I can't think of the exact.
Hang on, just listen. Let's give you the 100% benefit of the doubt, and let's imagine that there's a verse in the Bible that says God is light. My question still stands. How do you know that God is light? Because the fact that even if there was a Bible verse that says God is light, that wouldn't be enough to confirm that God exists or that God is light. So how do we know that God is light?
Because God is everywhere.
Is light everywhere?
Yes. Even when a room is dark,
it's not everywhere.
Light.
But how do you know that God is everywhere?
Because God is everywhere. Because light.
Okay. I don't know what we're going to do here, Leonard.
Is God a particle or a wave?
Pardon?
Is God a particle or a wave?
I don't know what that means.
Is light a particle or a wave?
Light is light. And God is light.
So God is photons? I'm trying to, we have scientific definitions of what light is.
Mean.
Okay.
God is light.
Just for clarity, Leonard. Is God okay? Is God sound?
Well, he talks to people, so yes, yeah, he can be as well. Yeah, God is everywhere.
How do you know that God is everywhere?
Because God is light, and light is everywhere.
Okay. I don't know how to talk to you, Leonard. We're asking you questions and you're saying things that are just absolutely 100% circular. God is light. How do you know that? Because God is everywhere. How do you know that? Because God is light. How do you know that? I'm asking, how can someone come to the knowledge that God is in fact everywhere? How do you come by that knowledge?
It says so in the Bible.
Okay. Is it possible that the Bible might say something and that it's not true?
No, because the people that God wrote it. Why would God lie?
Okay. The Bible wasn't written by a God, and you're still so wow. You're saying that the Bible can't be wrong because it was written by God, but you're using the
Yes.
Bible to try to prove that there's a God. That's circular reasoning, and so it's absolutely 100% flawed. How do you
I don't know
know?
what that means.
I know you. I know you're gonna you either don't or you're gonna pretend that you don't. So, because at this point, Leonard, is it raining outside right now?
It's nighttime.
It's not nighttime here.
Sometimes it rains
I
at
don't
night.
know where you are. I'm guessing you're in America.
My thing is, when I asked you if it was raining, instead of you telling me whether or not it's raining where you are, or saying it's probably raining somewhere, or saying you're unsure of where, if it's raining somewhere else or whatever, your answer was, it's nighttime. So, Leonard, I don't think you and
Okay.
I have any hope of having any sort of productive conversation about anything, because I don't seem to be able to ask you any question where we get any answer that is remotely in the ballpark of useful or on topic.
I
Can it
can only
rain?
apologize.
Can it rain at night?
Yes, of course it can.
Is it also possible that you could go through an entire nighttime and it doesn't rain?
Yeah, it doesn't rain every night.
Which means, Leonard, right, that whether or not it's nighttime is irrelevant to the question of whether or not it's raining, right?
The two are not connected.
Correct. So when I asked you if it was raining, why did you comment on whether or not it's nighttime?
I don't know. That was just the first thought that came into my mind.
Okay. If we can at least agree that you responded with something that wasn't relevant to the question, that's a start.
I can only apologize.
Okay. So where you're at right now, if you were to look outside the window, is it raining where you are now?
No.
Cool. Is God rain?
Yeah. Yes. God is everything.
But if God is rain and it's not raining where you are right now, then God isn't where you are right now.
God's everything. So he's also like out there watching because he's everything.
Okay. So saying that God is rain doesn't carry any significance, because whether there's rain or not, there's still God, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's also true for sound and light and all of those things, right?
Yes. God
Say.
is
So
light.
also, light isn't everywhere. But if God is everywhere and we found somewhere where there wasn't light, would God be there too?
Yes.
Cool. Then whether or not God is light or rain or sound is irrelevant, because your belief is that God is everywhere, and that whether or not there's light or rain or sound is irrelevant because God is everywhere. And so I'm asking you, how can I know that God is in fact everywhere?
Because everything exists. Like, if you look at
Leonard,
anything,
when you say
it's there,
exists,
which means God made it.
If everything except God stopped existing right now, would God still exist?
like if the whole world and the universe
Everything. If everything stopped existing except for God, would God still exist?
yes,
Cool.
'cause
Which means
God is God.
Which means that God exists whether anything exists or not, right?
God is everywhere. So yes, 'cause God is everywhere and everything.
How do you know that?
It's in the Bible.
Okay. Paul,
And
have you got
when
anything?
when you can see, you can see everything.
So, do you, Leonard? Do you know what a tautology is?
Do I know what is? Sorry, pardon.
A tautology. So basically,
No.
you seem to be defining God into existence by basically saying that everything that we're going to say. I feel like if I said, is cancer God, you would say yes, and if am I God, you would have to say yes. Like basically, God is not at this point a meaningful distinction from these things, because a tautology is essentially where everything is included in the set, right? And therefore, it's actually not that useful a thing to talk about, right? Because it's not useful to talk about any of these things.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay. Do you agree? You're basically saying, because you're basically by labeling everything God, you've made God a useless word. It's not a word that you can distinction. It's not a distinctive word from anything else. But I think we're going to have to leave that line of questioning. Are you aware that analogies exist? So, for example, when in the Bible, when God says that he spreads his wings of protection, are you imagining when you read those kind of verses that God is a chicken?
No, but
okay.
God can have wings if he wants to.
Oh, I agree. If God existed and wanted to have wings, he could. But you're understanding that in those verses, you're not intended to imagine God is a chicken, right? And so when Jesus says, "I'm the light of the world," which is in John 8, which is what I think you're referring to, that he may well have been trying to make an analogy, right? Maybe trying to use a expression, a metaphor.
Chickens can't fly.
Right, but they do spread their wings. Okay, I think I might be done, Matt. I cannot tell if Leonard is legitimately not understanding what I'm saying. Perhaps this is on me that I'm not saying words that make sense.
Yeah,
but I think we
it's
might
very
be at an
frustrating,
impasse.
and there's a few things. I'm sorry, Leonard, but there's some things that when we ask a question and you're like, I don't know what that means. There's no way for me to say this without being rude. I don't understand. How old are you?
34.
34.
Yeah.
I don't understand how someone who's 34 can function in society without understanding some of the things that you say you can't understand.
God helps me to understand what I need to understand.
How do you know what you need? How do you know that?
Because sometimes things can get, life can be stressful, and life can be hard sometimes. And so when it's hard, when life gets hard for me, I pray to God, and God helps me and tells me what I need.
Okay, so why didn't God tell you the things you needed to understand before you called in here today?
I don't know.
How often do you talk to God and get help?
Before I go to sleep and when I wake up and before eating and once in the evening after reading my Bible.
Okay. And when God answers you, you hear an audible voice?
No.
But you said God was sound and
It's
that he
like-
talks to people, and you know that God is sound because he talks to people. And yet now you're saying that when God talks to you, it's not sound?
My apologies. I don't mean like talks in a physical way. I mean,
But you
like
said God
talks
was
in
sound. And you said God was sound because you know he's sound because he talks to people. So are you saying that God talks to people in a way that's not sound?
Well, it's like sound in the mind
That's
is
not
different.
sound. That's not sound. That's not what sound is. Sound is vibrations. No. Sound does not take place. No, sound is not in the mind. Sound, the voice that you hear in your head is not sound. When I clap my hands, when the microphone picks it up, that's sound. That is waves of air at specific vibrations. That's what sound is. Hearing, thinking in your head, that's not sound. So when you said God was sound because he talks to people, that was a mistake. You mean that God is sound because, well, he's everything. And that when God talks to people, he doesn't hear sound. So here's the thing. When you talk to God several times a day, when he explains things you need to know, how clear is he?
Sometimes very clear, sometimes not so clear, and sometimes God just leaves you to it.
So sometimes God is really clear, sometimes God is not clear at all, and sometimes it's unclear whether God is clear or not.
Yes.
Aren't those all the possible answers? I mean, haven't you just painted with such a broad brush? How do you tell when God is giving you an answer versus when your brain comes up with something that's wrong and just makes you think God gave you the answer? How do you tell the difference?
Because I don't know how to answer that without sounding stupid. But sometimes God tells you.
How do you know? Why doesn't God tell me, Leonard? Why doesn't God tell me? Why is God talking to you, not giving you an understanding of things that you need to understand in order to be able to explain this stuff, when God could talk to me and tell me exactly what needs to be presented so that I can present arguments that aren't fallacious?
I don't know what that word means, but I don't know why God doesn't talk to you.
Why don't you ask him?
I'm not God.
No, why don't you ask God why he doesn't talk to me?
I don't understand why God doesn't talk to you. I hope he does.
I know you don't understand,
I hope he will.
Leonard. I'm saying, why don't you ask God why he won't talk to me?
Well, ask God now.
Do you think he'll answer you right now?
Probably not right now.
Okay. Well, you go ahead and leave and you ask God. You ask him tonight before you go to bed, ask him in the morning when you get up, ask him before your meals. You keep asking God why he doesn't talk to me until he gives you an answer, and then call back and let me know.
Okay. And I hope that he does talk to you. And I wish everyone well, and that God blesses everyone who's watching. and you.
Great. Thanks, Leonard. Whew. Lazarus is calling from Romania. Lazarus, pronouns are he, him, is a theist who's stuck between two religions. Hey, Lazarus, how are you doing? And why are you stuck between two religions? Why not give them up, both up?
Hi, Matt. I don't know if you can hear me right now.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, all right. So, quick story is my father was a Muslim, and my mother is Christian Orthodox, and I don't know, like I've lived my life between both countries. I'm still quite young, like 21, 22, and it's been a challenge to sort of explain to people why I can't sort of believe everything that they believe. Like, when I talk to Muslims, they use the argument that I'm circumcised, so if it's not my choice, I'm sort of a Muslim, and I'm also baptized, so still again. And I know I wanted to maybe ask for a bit of advice on how to talk to these sort of people to try and explain. I don't know how to do this. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. This is a little strange because it seems like you're calling a couple atheists to ask them how to tell the religious people around you that you're still religious, just don't agree with them.
Yeah, that's actually, I do believe that there is a God, or I want to believe that there is one, but still I've been like a spinning top that sometimes wobbles around, and I don't know.
What kind of God do you think there is, Lazarus, that leaves you spinning around like a top between two religions that are tied together and yet very different? Why won't God fix this for you? Why is God having you call atheists?
Yeah, good question actually, because I tried talking to theists and they didn't have any answer that I could use to move forward with my life, and I've been stuck on it, I think, since I started to understand a bit of the world around me. And I know I didn't have any chance with theists, so to say, to comprehend their side of things. So it was kind of instilled in me since I was a child. I understand that and I'm conscious of it. So I wanted to.
Are you evaluating,
Go ahead, Paul.
Lazarus, you're evaluating perhaps that. Are you considering at least the option that perhaps there isn't God? Is that part of what's happening? Like, is that one of the thoughts in your head that maybe there's no God? Okay.
Yeah, and it makes me stressed, I think.
Right. So I understand. I think Matt and I both understand very well that the families around us, when they hold certain beliefs and we start to entertain the notion that maybe those beliefs aren't as solid as we thought, they're often not open to that discussion, and that perhaps close family are not the people with which you should start those discussions while you're still figuring out what you're thinking, because there's those conversations have consequences beyond just the academic of coming to figure out what you believe in a dispassionate and evidence-based way. So I think my first bit of advice there would be, don't maybe have these conversations with close friends and family on this matter if the conversation is going to bleed over into other aspects of your relationships, and sounds like as a young man, perhaps you're not ready financially and set up in the world in other ways. Potentially it's going to impact you in ways that are just not unwelcome. So I guess my first bit of advice is maybe don't have those conversations primarily with them. I think you should probably find other people with which you can explore these ideas. And I love the fact that you are open to the notion that maybe God isn't real, because I think anyone who's close to that notion isn't having an honest faith in the first place, right? If you're not at least open to the idea that God's not real, then you're holding to some dogma. And I think that's maybe perhaps you can see in a unique position where you're seeing two competing religions and you can kind of see problems with them both. That is a weird position and not one that I've personally been in, but I get why maybe you might have some insights that neither are true. Do you have people in your life, like friends at school or friends at work, who are open to have these what if conversations? What if God didn't exist, and how could we reconstruct our belief without relying on a holy book? Do you have people in your life who you can talk to that aren't your family?
Yeah, actually, I have a very good friend of mine who's Christian Orthodox, who like amazed me how logically and how just how good he thinks and judges things around him. But like he's a biologist and he studied evolution very well, and he understands it and explained to me very well evolution. But when it comes to his religion and Christianity, it's like, I don't know, somebody just switches around his neurons in his mind, and just the dogma.
I love that you're identifying that, because a lot of us, in fact, everyone, I'm confident in saying everyone on earth holds some true beliefs and some false beliefs. I think if I could identify them, I'd get rid of them, but I probably hold some false beliefs. Matt probably holds some false beliefs. Hopefully they're not serious ones. But I do love that you're acknowledging then that there's people can believe some true things, some false things. Probably if you talk to some academic Muslims, they could point out some of the flaws in the Catholic Orthodox position. Matt and I probably could as well. Yeah. But you know, and I think what Matt and I want you to entertain, and I think that's how Matt started, was, well, what if it's not choosing A or B? You have to decide, well, is it maybe C, none of the above, right? Like that's an option on the table, and it sounds like that's going to make you unpopular with everyone in your life, unfortunately. Matt and I, unfortunately, also have experienced that, where our relationships with our families aren't what they once were, because we've now had to segregate off. We don't talk about religion. Fortunately, I think I can speak for Matt and I that we still have some forms of relationships with our family that are beneficial and good, but they're not what they once were when we all held sway identically.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
The whole point was to you called in to say, hey, I'm stuck between two religions, and so my brain immediately goes to, okay, why are you stuck between two religions? Why aren't you looking at other options? Which is why I started there, because there's three possibilities: either Christianity is right, Islam is right, or neither of them is right. And for me, the decision between those three options is pretty straightforward. Whichever one seems to be most correct or most likely correct is the one that I'm going to essentially run with over the others. And so if somebody's like, oh, I can't decide between Christianity and Islam, I'm like, all right, both of those are religions that are Abrahamic, that are tied to the same foundational God concept. And so if one of them is true, either of them, it should be obvious. Like, what kind of God winds up with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam and doesn't bother to correct and say, oh, no, I'm sorry. The Jews got this part right. The Muslims got this part right. The Christians got this part right. No. You guys got, all three of you managed to get it all wrong. There's this other sect over here. If you don't have a way to tell whether Christianity or Islam is more correct, I would say that's already sufficient evidence that neither of them are correct, because both of them advocate for a God that would want you to know that it existed, would want you to know that this is the correct religion, that Christianity is true, that Islam is true. And the fact that this hasn't been solved for you, and that you don't seem to have any way to solve it. And when you look at the history of human beings, there is a constant struggle between Islam and Christianity, between Islam and Judaism. So nobody else has solved this either. And no God has come forward and said, here we go. Here's how we resolve this. To me, it seems patently obvious that neither of them are believable. And so now the question then becomes, do I need to pretend to believe one of them for some other reason? And I can imagine, so like if half my family were Christian and half my family were Muslim, and I had no way of telling the difference between the two, I'd probably be a Muslim because they're more likely to have incredibly negative, harmful, like my Christian family just thinks I worship Satan. They just think I'm living for Satan. It's, well, God will take care of him. That's it. I don't get any threats of, even if it's not me, even if they're not going to take me out. I mean, just if I was a woman and an apostate, am I going to get acid thrown in my face? Cool. I'm going to stay a devout Muslim until I can find a way to escape that sort of thing. If I'm in a Christian cult that is essentially keeping me from interacting with other people in the world, I'm going to pretend to believe right up until I can escape. And so if you're calling because you're looking for a way to escape, you're in Romania. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what your options are. I don't know what your social networks are. But if you're asking for a strategic assessment, you need to do whatever keeps you safest until such time as you are free to follow your own conscience, believe as your conscience dictates, and say, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm an atheist, and let the chips fall where they may. Until you are comfortable enough saying those things, you need to do whatever keeps you safest and gets you to the point where you can make that decision. And that's my best advice on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. It just becomes like a bit tiring after a while. It's every time I have to change and put on a new mask and pretend that I'm going with the flow, like with the ideology that they present. And I've had some talks with a couple of friends from both sides, and honestly, these friends, they're more or less not really accepting, but they understand like the struggle I'm in, even though they don't understand it fully. Actually, even my girlfriend, she's a Muslim, and it's a bit different. It's a bit difficult, but she understands me very, very well and the predicament I'm in. And I think all of this started when I was 15. My dad had a very rough surgery, and one of my cousins, who was Muslim, told me to pray for him, and I didn't. And my dad died the next day, and so I've been thinking oh my God, if it's my fault. Maybe if I prayed, maybe if I did this or that, maybe he would have lived. But then I started to understand more that it wasn't really my fault, that there were circumstances, medical faults, things in our physiology that we can't really change. And that's when things started to brighten up a little, and I started thinking more critically about them. It just becomes so tiring after a while, having to pretend and not really having an honest conversation. Just I don't know. That's why I wanted to talk to you guys. Maybe hear a bit of your stories as well. How you did it, how you escaped, as you said.
I'm a cis, het, straight, white male in the United States of America with 25 buckets of privilege. So when I lost my tech job and had already publicly been doing atheism and secular activism for years without any consequences, I just decided to essentially do it full time. If I'm in a position, and maybe I'm a little weird, maybe this is privilege, but my parents think I'm working for Satan. But if my parents want to be a part of my life, they can be, and we can interact, provided that there's, respect and all that stuff. And if there's not, if they're going to try to bombard me with religious stuff or, I don't know, other things that aren't conducive to a good relationship, then I don't need them. I'm one of these individuals. I don't care about my heritage. I don't care if we're blood relatives. You're family when you act like family. And I prefer the people in my life who I consider family, whether they're related to me or not, to many of the people who are in fact related to me. There are exceptions. My brother's my favorite person. I've mentioned that many times before. But if he ever turns out to be a shithead that's bad for my life, then I guess I'm just not going to interact with my brother. And I get it. Not everybody is in a position where they can make those kinds of decisions. I don't have kids to worry about. There are people, in relationship with kids. I don't have kids to worry about. And at the end of the day, if my parents and I aren't on good speaking terms, if that's the thing that's better for my life, then it's better by definition. It doesn't mean it doesn't suck a little bit, but I'm diabetic. I shouldn't be eating candy bars 24/7. Actually, nobody should be eating candy bars 24/7, but I definitely shouldn't. And it sucks that I don't get to enjoy them as often as I'd like to. But it's better for my life overall, even if in the short term it causes me some, frustration. Anyway, I hope that's at least clear that I understand your situation isn't like mine, and that I had advantages that other people don't have. And Paul's got a different story because there are factors in his that don't relate to mine. So I will stop now and let you hear Paul's story, since that's what you're asking for.
Well, mine is similar on the parts that are important, and that is that I do not have to actively conceal any part of my identity in order to function well in society. But Matt and I both know and love people who do have to be disingenuous about who they really are, situation to situation. And Matt and I are the wrong people to first person empathize on that, even though Matt and I have both had to put on masks. And I live in a tiny little town in Canada, and sometimes being an atheist, that's not always the best label, but we don't have the kind of situation you are in. So I don't want, neither of us are pretending that we firsthand get what you get, but we do know and love people who have to put on those masks far more often than Matt and I do. And all we can give you is our empathy and relay to you the people who we know and love who are in those positions, that it is awful to not be able to be your genuine self 24/7. That don't feel like that is a feeling you should be feeling based on all evidence, right? That is an unfair situation that you can't be your genuine self all the time. Matt and I both wish for you that you will one day be able to be your genuine self 24/7, and we hope that you will be able to find a path for that to be possible. And we give you the bad news that may well mean some compromises and or cutting off of some family, in order to, if that is your ultimate, where you ultimately want to be. And that we reiterate that pragmatically, it's okay that right now, pragmatically, you might not be able to be there because you can't control the circumstance you're in and the people around you. And so pragmatically, wearing those masks part of the time, we get it. Matt and I both did it at a very small fraction of what you're dealing with. But I think our message is really just one of encouragement, and that we acknowledge that what you're going through sucks. I think on the belief side of things, it sounds like you have gone through the process of trying to, if you didn't assume that it's true, try and build to what it's true. I think if you wanted to do that with the Abrahamic faith, you can just start with, forget whether Muslim is correct or Christian is correct. You need to start with, like, can you justify without going to a book that God is true, since they have the same God? And it sounds like you've gone through some of those processes. So,
yeah, I did.
Look, Lazarus, I mean, I think with this point, we are empathizing with you, and we are hoping that you find a path through. All that we can do is give you permission to say you are on a valid path, that none of these are true, and that pragmatically you can't always admit that.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you.
Yep. All right. I appreciate you calling. I hope that works out for you. And I hope you got some information that's useful, and, reach out. I don't know if there's a recovering from religion that you can access in Romania, but there is on the web. So check that out as well. Thanks so much, Lazarus. We have some lines open for theists. We've got a couple atheist callers we're going to try to get to. But if you're a theist, this is your last opportunity to call in during this show. But there's another show later tonight as well, starting at 7 p.m. Central. So in 3 hours, there's the Sunday show after dark. And in addition to that, there are also all the shows that are here on the Line Network. And do I have the current schedule? Yes, I do. March 2025. Look at that. I see all these. Look, it's Matt and Paulogia. And then tomorrow I see Aaron Adair and Owen Morgan on Skeptalk. And Tuesday's Chewed Gum, I see Alyssa and Erica. And Wednesday's Hang Up is I see me and Jimmy, and the Transatlantic Collins Show on Thursday with Josie and Ben. Oh, I see all of them. It's so exciting. We're going to get to do all this stuff.
You and I are the only ones old enough to get your romper room references.
Yes. Romper room. Yeah. Also, if you missed it, there was a special Cus I Wanna on Friday night that if you haven't gone back to watch, you should, because we absolutely had a guest that's just dynamite. We're looking forward to more. And it was a lot of fun, I think. Didn't you have fun there, producer lady?
Yeah, it was a really good show. Javon Bradley is a kick-ass creator, a really good debater.
Sweet. We're going to keep lines open just briefly if there's a theist trying to call in. In the meantime, we're going to try to talk to a couple atheists, although who knows? Adam in North Carolina is calling, says there's 3 good ways to talk Christians out of worshiping Trump.
Hey, thanks for having me. Do you want me to?
I guess I'm incredibly confused. Okay, how do you talk Christians out of loving or worshiping Trump? I guess.
Well, I think listening to the calls, I kind of heard, like we've said, many of us are not that. There's family we talk to about our lack of faith, and there's family we don't talk to. And so in my life, some people, don't know my lack of faith as well as it's out there. And so with that, having conversations with your family is probably one of the best ways. And I want to point out what can be said, because did you see the Trump Gaza video, which is absolutely abhorrent? I'm assuming you saw it.
The AI thing, yes.
Yeah, the absolutely abhorrent video. But if you speak to your family and you mention, hey, did you see that video? And, because we have the most influence of our family, there's a golden statue in that video, which kind of reminds me of the golden calf. And you go, and Trump's also doing this gold card. I think what we need to do, if we are an educated non-believer, is use things like, hey, what was the song for The Apprentice? Wasn't it money, money, money? And doesn't the Bible say the love of money is the root of all evil? And slowly chip away at them with these. How is
that relevant? So here, I'm going to put my Jesus hat on, and my Jesus hat is here, and it's very simple and it's straightforward. I'm a Christian. Hi.
Hi.
Trump is who God wants to be president. There's nothing perfect about Trump. Trump is a vile individual who's a womanizer and who worships money, but God uses Trump to achieve something good.
Yeah, and family member Jesus, Matt, I was reading in Revelation how, there's the Antichrist kind of comes about, and it's almost from someone from within the church, and that's kind of just been on my heart a little bit. And I
It
was just
has
thinking
been,
over those verses in Revelation.
but I don't consider Trump to be in the church, so Trump can't be the Antichrist.
I know.
Congratulations.
And just when I think
Congratulations on instantly defeating your own argument.
Well,
Meanwhile,
I've had
Meanwhile, you're telling them what you seem to remember in Revelation, as if you are some spiritual expert on end time stuff. I mean, I'm sitting here as someone who used to believe all this stuff, and you're saying, "Oh, here's how I convince you to stop worshiping Trump." And I'm telling you that if I were still a Christian, Christians don't worship Trump.
I know I said they worship, some of them I believe within MAGA, because MAGA has, in my mind, become sort of a cult if you look at the BITE model. But here's the issue.
I would agree. I would agree as well. I would agree as well. But you called in to talk about good ways to talk Christians out of worshiping Trump or, admiring Trump. And so far, you have failed epically on the only attempt. So I'm like,
well, but no, that this is not the only attempt, though, because the proof is in the pudding.
It's the only attempt so far. We had one.
But you're not my family.
We had one back and forth. We had one back and forth, and it failed miserably. That's what I was saying. If you have additional attempts, that's fine. But when I point out that your one attempt failed miserably, you don't get to say, "Well, it's not the only attempt." The fact is, it failed.
Well, but 75% of my family has voted for Trump. Now 0% of my family votes for Trump, and they're all Christian. So the proof is in the pudding, because I never went to them and told them.
Adam, is your family a representative sample? And how does that impact the fact that you just presented an argument that is bullshit?
Well, it has been shown to work in a case study.
What's been shown to work in a case study?
That the closer you are to people, the more influence you have over them. And that if you slowly chip away from over time with
I'm sorry, Adam. But first of all, did you think there was any planet in the world where we wouldn't realize that the closer you are to somebody, the more influence you potentially have over them? And did you think there was a reality in which I wouldn't recognize that that's a completely irrelevant red herring that has nothing to do with the fact that you presented an argument that failed?
The argument is that if we work on people close to us with small arguments that are biblically based to pull them away from Trump, we're slowly cutting away the tentacles that have been wrapped around them with MAGA. And we have to do that slowly over time.
No, Adam, I'm not interested in your assertions and bullshit.
I don't see how it's bullshit.
You don't see how it's bullshit. How many people did you convince to stop supporting Trump?
I would say between 15 to 20.
Cool. And were they all Christians?
Yes.
And they all changed their mind because you came to them about how unchristian Trump is?
No, we slowly had conversations over time of between 2016 to 2024. By the end of 2024, none of them have voted for Trump again.
I'm sorry. So over an 8-year period, you had a bunch of different conversations, but now you think you come in here and suggest that talking to them about how Trump might be the Antichrist is a good tactic.
Well, that was what was in the role play right there. And
I'm sorry,
I would preferably do.
I'm sorry. Do I have access to the other 8 years of conversations that you've had that you used to change somebody's mind in your really small sample size? Or do I only have access to what you presented? And so when I address what you presented and what you presented was bad, what am I supposed to do?
Well, what I started with was Trump Gaza and the golden statue of Trump and money being thrown around in the video. And as we all know, it says the love of money is the root of all evil.
So what? That Does that in
So
any
when we
way,
think about
does
what
that
is
in any,
biblical,
does that in any way, does that in any fucking way mean that a Christian should not vote for Trump?
it means over time you chip away at them.
Does that
It
in
takes
any
time.
way mean that a Christian should not vote for Trump?
Yes.
Bullshit.
When we say
You
the
don't
love of money is the
understand,
root of all
you
evil,
don't understand Christianity in the slightest.
what did I miss about Christianity?
All of the
What did I
world
miss?
leaders are appointed by God. If God is the one
I
that
know, it's
Trump
Roman.
wants, if God is the one that Trump wants, then that's who the Christians should vote for. And you don't get to say that Trump appears to be kind of Antichrist-like, and therefore you shouldn't vote for him, if they're already convinced that Kamala and the Democrats and the woke left are the ones that are advocating for the satanic stuff. Trump is not viewed as godlike or Christ-like or even a good Christian by Christians. Trump is viewed as who God wants. And that's all that matters.
I promise.
And the fact that you
I promise
convinced
you.
a handful of people in your family over the course of 8 years, congratulations. Go ye therefore unto all the world and make some changes. Thank you. I do not need bad arguments of how you think you can convince Christians to stop supporting Trump. It's too fucking late, first of all.
Yeah. What I suspect happened there was over those course of 8 years that our caller was able to identify the things specifically within their family, because everyone has a different reason, right? Like some are just like whichever is the abortion one, right? Like you need to get that Socratic, why are you voting? And then but every person's gonna be different. He may well have found the little arguments that held his family in sway, and that's awesome, and I love that. But that doesn't mean you get to throw out this golden calf thing as a general argument. The advice you want to give is definitely talk to your family, definitely talk to people to try to make positive change, absolutely. But you need to be mostly asking questions about why that person holds the opinion that you don't, and addressing those points, not coming in with your pamphlet of 3, and these are the 3 silver bullets that I've got that somehow are going to make, because some Christians think revelation is everything. Some people think it's garbage. So if you come in, I know why you vote for Trump, and it's because of this verse in Revelation. Well, that's just assuming, going into any conversation, that you know why someone holds a particular opinion is just not going to get anywhere. Socratic
It's also ridiculous in the sense that Christianity is not a homogenous collection of individuals. No. Are there Christians out there who are opposed to Trump? Yes. There are tons of Christians out there who already voted against Trump. Tons of them. Stop pretending that Christianity is some uniform fucking block of hive mind. They're not. There's a reason there's over 1,000 different denominations. There's a reason there's a First Baptist Church and a Second Baptist Church and an Independent Baptist Church and a Free Will Baptist Church and a Pentecostal Church, all within a mile of each other, right over there across the street from me. Don't pretend like it's one fucking hive mind and that you've got the magic bullet, especially if your magic bullet is talking to your friends and family over 8 fucking years. Well, guess what? We don't have 8 fucking years to worry about Trump anymore. Or 12. Or any of it. It means it's over and done with. Oh, bullshit, Sparrow. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. All right, so... Oh, you're using logic. No, I'm not using logic. I'm using the exact thing that we were taught as Christians, which is that God appoints your leader, and you are supposed to vote as God wants to bring about specific things. An end to abortion was the number one tactic that they used to manipulate Christians for ages. Abortion is an abomination in their perspective. And the only thing they cared about was what a candidate's position was on abortion. They'll vote against their own best interests over and over and over and over and over again. When the religious right, when the moral majority pushed Reagan, people in the Christian world didn't look at that as, hey, we're in the 80s now, greed is good. No, everybody thought greed was good. They didn't think it was Christian. They just thought, we're making money. Let's make some money. That's all fine because I'm going to donate 20%. If I make more money, I can donate more to God. This is why God is blessing me. This is how you end up with the prosperity gospel. Don't tell me I don't fucking know how these people think. I've been part of them and watching how these people think for 50 fucking years. And it's a wide spectrum. There are Christians who think probably that Trump is the second coming of Christ. But that's fringe nut jobs that don't represent even a single church, let alone any significant portion of the denominations. But there are a lot of Christians who are convinced that Trump is the guy God wants. And you know who really thinks that? The people who want an apocalypse. The people who want unrest in the Middle East to lead to the second coming of Christ. They think it's inevitable. And yet we had a caller call earlier there, Adam, who wanted to explain why as a Christian he voted for Trump. What was his reason? Would it have made any difference if Paul and I had suggested, did you see the Gaza video? No, because an AI-generated video of bearded belly dancers and Trump licking Elon's 2 left feet, which I thought was extra funny, is not even if Trump posts it, is not in any way an indictment on Trump or what Trump wants or whatever. It's all bad. It's all awful. But I think he might be the Antichrist. Well, that's because you're a godless heathen who doesn't understand Scripture. And because you are not godly, because God has given you over to a reprobate mind, you are not doing the thing that's supporting the woke left, instead of doing the thing that supports God and Christ. I fucking feel disgusting that I have to pop this hat on and deliver fucking lectures while people are pretending to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. Congratulations. I'm so glad that you managed to convince a few people in your family to stop supporting Trump. That's really nice. Although, it's a little too late. Because it's not going to matter anymore. There's not going to be another election with Trump on the ballot. And if there is, we've already lost everything. And if he retains power, even absent election, we've already lost that too. And talking about how you think, see, this is the same person who called before that were like, atheists are really bad at convincing people to vote for Kamala. Well, congratulations. How'd that work out for you? If you think atheists are going to get better at getting people to vote for Kamala by telling their family members that maybe Trump's the Antichrist. Yeah. All right. Final call for today is Red, an atheist, is fine with any pronouns, nothing preferred, but a former indoctrinated Christian. You're struggling with something, Red. What's going on? You're on with Paul and Matt.
Hey guys, I'm Matt. Huge fan, by the way. I literally binge your videos like almost every day while I play games. Anyway, yeah, I just I like I said, I'm an ex-Christian. I was risen that way, and then eventually, I guess as I got older, I guess started thinking more logically about stuff in the Bible that I thought I didn't understand, when in reality I just didn't agree with. And I think I just, for a while, wanted to prove to myself, I just don't understand, so that way I'd, feel comfortable about being a Christian, I guess, and like convincing myself to believe, basically. But lately, I've been an ex-Christian for a while now, though. But I haven't been as disgusted by religion until recently. And that's just because I guess I've been researching more, also watching lots of your videos to get re-educated on stuff in the Bible that is really immoral. And my whole family is religious. I don't live with them anymore, but I'm very close to them still. And I guess I wanted advice from you, Matt, because I know you have experience with falling out as a family due to religion. Do you have any advice on how I should handle that? Because I talk to my mom sometimes, and I feel like if I love her, I should, I guess, somehow get her out of that, because I feel like that's a really unhealthy lifestyle, even if it does have some good. So I guess that's about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know you asked me, and I'm happy to give you my thoughts, but honestly, I'm also interested in hearing what Paul has to say about this, because for me, I understand the feeling that, holy crap, I need to help people see the error of their ways. I was duped by this for so long. I really need the ability to help people, see what I've seen. On the other hand, you're not able to fix everybody, and you may not have access to even the right ways to start the conversation with family members. Trying to figure out who you're going to fix, how you're going to fix them. Who the hell knows? And yet it's incredibly frustrating, because these are people you're going to have to talk to over and over again. You're going to interact with on a regular basis. And it feels like you're failing them, like their house is on fire, and you haven't told them that their house is on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the problem. How do you prove their house is on fire? If we're talking about a belief that is ultimately unfalsifiable, you're in a really difficult spot, because you can't say, oh, I can prove that Jesus isn't God. Because you can't. Oh, I can prove there's no God. You can't. You can make arguments about specific types of gods and categories of gods and things like that. But if their God claim is unfalsifiable, it's probably not even worth the time to dig in on any conversations about that God until you have conversations on falsifiability and how do we tell, what's believable and all those things. That's the best that I can come up with for dealing with family, is to say, here's why I don't believe what you believe. And put the burden of proof where it's supposed to be. That if in fact they're correct, they should be able to demonstrate it. And if you're being unreasonable, if you're being unreasonable, I just did a video. It's out to patrons. It's not to everybody yet, but it'll be out to everybody over the next month, because all my videos on the Atheist Debates Project channel get released for free to everybody. There's a puzzle that got passed around where you have, actually, I'm not going to ruin the video. I don't need to give another example. The advice that I have is to have the conversations about why you don't agree and how they would demonstrate it and how they would show this, that this is true. But the other thing is, don't feel like you're under an obligation to fix people. The obligation that I think you have is to be open to discussing it with them when they want to and when you are ready, because you don't owe anybody an explanation. But if to whatever extent you could have a moral responsibility, I think it would be to explaining, here's why I not only don't believe what you believe, but think you are in fact wrong or think you are at risk. I think there you may have some moral obligation, but when it comes to you believe something and I don't, there is no, I don't have to talk you out of it. You don't have to talk me into it. We could just let it go, kind of a la Frozen. I don't know, but Paul probably has, well, maybe not. Maybe Paul's takes the same as
Red,
mine, but at least it's different.
It's slightly different. So I struggled with this myself, and I even concealed my identity to my remaining grandparents, and they never did learn of my disbelief, for example. But without going into personal details, I think where you might have an obligation, and even though I fight against oughts without is and that kind of thing, and Red, you may not agree, but I feel that my personal obligations are in reducing harm and increasing flourishing. Right. So if my family had false beliefs, I'm not obligated to correct that. But if I know that my family is actively hurting other people, so for example, some Christians are out actively evangelizing, some aren't. I feel like I would have more obligation to someone who's actively evangelizing and potentially going to drag someone new down. Some advocate against people's rights. Well, that I feel like you have more of an obligation to step in and help them, perhaps, to see how, despite what their belief framework is, that they're causing harm. But if as far as you can tell, for example, some believers don't evangelize, they don't talk about it, they don't let it affect how they vote. So their primary harm they're doing to themselves is bad epistemology. That you can maybe let go, and you can work on that entirely from an epistemological standpoint. You can talk about non-religious things and say, well, how do you know how do we evaluate whether this Trump video was made by AI or not? You can talk about how to evaluate truth claims. You can talk about those kind of things, and that does help maybe them come to better belief down the road. I've had success with some of my family members who are no longer young earth creationists. I think that's a huge win, right? Like they still absolutely believe, but some of the baggage that comes with young earth creationism is gone, and that's been a help. So I do think, Red, if you are aware of places where your family is using religion to actively harm people, you should definitely work on that. Otherwise, I wish I had the studies, and I wanted to try and look them up with Adam. It's my understanding that a family member is actually the least likely to change people's fundamental beliefs, because the family member, think about your parents, for example. They wiped your butt. They've known you all along, right? Like, you're not likely to be the one to bring them some kind of new piece of information, because that's diluted with all this other stuff. Typically, it's strangers or things people you discover on your own that are most impactful in making these fundamental changes as opposed to incremental changes. So definitely, no, you are not obligated to deconvert anybody. Deconverting everybody isn't necessarily, while I think deconverting the whole world would be great. There would be individual people whose lives would absolutely be worse for deconverting. I totally get that. So you're gonna have to play it by ear. But Red, I think if you can identify family members that are doing active harm, work on that harm, not on the religion that underlies it. That would be my thoughts. To add on to what Matt said. I was nodding my head, with everything Matt said, but that would be my one little piece of adding on.
I personally just feel like, while it might not be, so to speak, harming other people, because they're not to my knowledge that they're doing anything to harm other people with their religion they believe in, but I do think that religion passively harms anyway.
Oh, I agree.
But I'm more worried about them themselves, because I feel like them believing this is harming their lifestyle, because I feel like, we can go on for this. There's so many
Yeah,
examples,
absolutely.
but just for one
Yeah, no,
example,
so
it's like, oh,
Can
I'm
I-
not going to work harder to have a better life because God is
So-
gonna, God's got the
Right.
plan or whatever.
Red, imagine that your grandmother was going to the church and playing bingo every Friday night. And every now and then she got a winning bingo ticket. And she really enjoyed it and had fun. And, whatever money she loses at bingo goes to the church, but she has fun. And then a little later, the church uses the fact that she enjoys bingo to get her to donate 20% of her Social Security check to the church. Is that church, like, I would look at that as a real harm being done on behalf of the religion by diminishing that person's quality of life. But the issue then becomes, what if your grandma's okay with it?
Okay,
Who are
with what
you to
exactly?
step-
Like having fun.
Okay with donating 20% of her income to a church?
hmm
What if she's okay with it and feels that she's surviving all right, but you think they're taking advantage of her, and you think that this is impacting her life and maybe your life and maybe other people's lives as well? At what point do you have an obligation to step in and say, I'm sorry, Grandma, but stop donating to the church? I mean, you may not have any legal right to do that ever, but at what point do you have a moral obligation? And if Grandma says, no, I like this, what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
I'm only bringing that up as an example because I felt the same thing that you felt, which is, oh my God, I found out I bought into a lie, or at least I don't have any good reason to believe this, or I have bad reasons. And I know the people around me, they have the same reasons. I need to go help them right now. And it's the same thing that happens, by the way, to new Christians, especially people who convert to Christianity in their late teens, early 20s, in that time frame when they're finally coming out of being children and little psychopaths. And then we find out, hey, we're learning more about the world. And oh my gosh, I've just discovered there's something amazing. This is why religious cults prey on those youth. It's not just because you can get a pretty girl to stand at the airport and get people's attention and hand them flyers. That's part of it. You can hand them flyers and flowers. But also, there's a period of time where we are seeking meaning and direction, where we've been led by our parents for a number of years or our guardians for a number of years. And now we're out on our own and it's potentially overwhelming, or we're close to being out on our own and it's potentially overwhelming. That finding the thing that brings you peace, something that corrects an error, something that makes your life better, that's exactly how all of these religions spread. And so you're going to be faced with this notion of, well, hang on, if I want to help my parents because I think they've been duped by religion, isn't that basically the same thing that they would do by thinking that I've been duped by Satan? Aren't they trying to, are we just going to be preaching at each other? And the answer is
exactly.
Yes, you're going to do that. And as long as people are open to the idea that we are in fact both doing this, and it's still an issue about whether or not there is a right answer and whether or not that answer is harmful or helpful, as long as we're all being honest about those things, then the notion that you're gung-ho and in favor and supporting something, whether it's Jesus or anti-Jesus, just means you found something that's changed your life and you want to share it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't be a dick about it. Don't harass your grandma. Let your grandma know you love her, you're worried about her. Let your grandma know that if she needs help, you're there. Let your grandma, and I'm saying all this it works the same for any family member. And to say, okay, there are those limits. If you're going to pick your church and your God over, accepting your queer grandkid, okay, fuck you, grandma. Give all your money to the church. I don't care. I mean, if you're not going to listen, if you're not going to be decent, all I'm saying is I feel what you feel, and that you feel this need to engage with people and potentially help. And that's great. Do it. Just make sure that all you're doing is saying, I don't share your beliefs and I have some concerns. If you'd like to talk about it, I'm open to talk. I'm not here to take over your life or fix your life, but I have some concerns and I'd be willing to help or talk or whatever else. And that's kind of that advice. And for people who are coming out, what I've said over the years is don't make a big deal out of it. Don't do a, mom, dad, family. We need to have a family meeting and have everybody sit down. And I need to explain to you all, I no longer believe in Jesus. I think that is the absolute worst coming out method ever. But it would be funny, and I'd like for somebody to film that someday.
I don't know if any of that was helpful, Red, but hopefully you got something out of it.
No, it was very helpful. It was very helpful. I already was thinking about most of what you guys said, but to hear someone else say it helps a lot. But I have one other question, and it's just that kind of on the lines of like, if my grandma is okay with it, right, and she's happy with it, and I guess from her perspective, she's not in any harm. But we do talk sometimes about like, hey, I don't know if this bingo thing's good. You putting all your money to the church. If one day she was convinced, she's like, oh my gosh, all these years I've been sending the money to the church. I could have used this on all this other stuff. Like, she believes me, and that now she's not a Christian anymore. But now she's like, needs extra help, like from the trauma you will get from basically realizing, oh wow, I've been living this lie for so long and I've lost so much to it. Is that worth even getting towards, if that possibly could happen? Because
you can't know,
like for
you
my
can't know that, Red. It's possible that yes, because a lot of us have regrets, and obviously the later in life you are, the more the less time you have to maybe course correct on some of those regrets. But you can't know if that's going to be very harmful, or maybe it will be a huge relief to that person, right? And that they've been weighed down for things you don't know, or they can't even articulate, or like I've met very few people who, after coming out of religion, while they express a lot of those kind of things, would say, I would prefer that I didn't know. I'd prefer that no one had shared this information with me. That's not a refrain that I've heard. At least it's very rare, right? So yes, you can what if on how the person will react, but unfortunately, you just can't know that. Like the exact opposite is equally plausible, right? That it's a huge relief, and that person lives their remaining years unburdened and much happier, right? Like that's equally possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we can traumatize, but
I was just gonna say, just to help me maybe better understand what to do, just for the sake of argument. Obviously, we don't know for sure, but for the sake of argument, let's say that I knew my mom would be extremely traumatized by this if she woke up one day and realized it was a lie. Should I just be like, okay, I guess it's better for her to just believe in this, and as long as she's not hurting anyone, and as long as she feels like she's not hurting either from this, then like, should I just move on? Should I just let that be a thing?
Well, I don't think, again, going back to their point, it's not your job. It's not your job to give people correct beliefs, right? Like that's just not in your obligation. So you should release yourself of any obligation you're feeling one way or the other. And I guess I would never advocate for deliberately lying to people or deliberately, going along with the false narrative necessarily. Like that's me personally. I wouldn't do that. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would just definitely at least don't enable it. Don't pretend like that's going on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you gotta find that balance. But release yourself of any thought that look. I think that knowing the truth is of better value than a placation. That's why Matt asked that earlier caller. Like, we don't. What if you find out we don't care about whether Christianity is useful? What we care about is whether it's true. So, does truth have its own intrinsic value? I think it does. I think that everyone is going to make better decisions based on actual facts versus distortions.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Matt I think has thoughts.
But there's one quick subtlety here on the whole truth issue, and that is there are people who, if they were dying of a terminal disease, who would want to know, and there are other people who wouldn't. And I think there's a moral obligation to consider whether you're dealing with the type of person who would want to know or not before you reveal that information. I want to know.
Mm.
If I'm dying of a terminal disease, I want to know. If I don't know, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing going to change. But if nobody knows, okay, big freaking deal. But if I'm dying, I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who definitely do not want to know. And there may be circumstances, for example, you're a doctor. You have a medical, you have an ethical obligation to the general medical profession, that if you run tests on someone and determine, this is an adult and they have stage 4 lymphoma, you have an ethical obligation to tell them whether they want to know or not, unless there's some weird little circumstance where they put somebody else in charge of their health and that person gets to make decisions, and that's all well and good. But if you did this as an analogy and you had the option to tell someone that they were dying and you knew they were dying or not, I think you would have to take into consideration whether or not they would want to know. And if you decided to impose your value for truth over theirs, I think that would be immoral. Now, it's made worse because they probably have an unfalsifiable belief. So you can't even show that what they believe is necessarily false, just that you don't like it, you don't think it's true, you think it's irrational, you think it's harmful. And so you really don't have much more than just your position, as an opinion. I don't know how it could be ethical to assert more than you can actually demonstrate. And that's why I started with, hey, I have concerns. I'd be happy to talk about this. I don't believe it. I think it's potentially harmful. Right. But if you don't want to talk about it and you don't want to know, that's fine. That example of the truth is incredibly important and I value it, but not everybody does, which is why we keep asking people, is it more important to you that something's true than whether or not it's comforting? And there are people, and it surprises me every single time, but there are way more people than I would ever expect who will flatly tell you that they care more about whether or not a belief is comforting than whether it's true. And while I appreciate their honesty in acknowledging that, I want to scream from the highest mountain that they're fucking wrong. And that, this is what's in me. This is why people are like, why can't Matt just be calm and do this and say this? Why does he got to get so excited? Because the fucking truth matters. And I find myself living in bizarro world where we have elected just the worst people. We are being controlled by buckets of stupid, gold-plated stupid is where we're at right now. And so trying to find the things that I can address, like, hey, this is a fallacy. Hey, here's how we would determine if this was worth believing. Those things become more important. And similarly, as much as I'd love to help everyone free themselves from religion, it's not only not an obligation I have, there are other obligations I have as a human being with regard to ethics. And so this is why I don't make outgoing calls on the show. I've got a phone system right here. I could pick it up and I could start making calls. We could have a show where I just randomly cold call people and say, hi, I'm your friendly online atheist. I'd like to talk to you about whether or not you believe in God and whether or not we can do something to fix that. And then, you get click, 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 but eventually that would be gold. Except that I got ethical issues with it. If I could get rid of my pesky little ethics, I'd be a fucking multimillionaire. I'd be rich enough to be a Republican.
So, Red, what Matt gave you a kernel there that I think is important, and that is that what you can talk about them without causing all these problems is you can talk to them about epistemology, right? You can talk to them about whether they care about true things and how you would find out these true things, and you have all those conversations about completely non-religious topics. Find out whether undercoating is good for your car, or how, like, you name the topic, but you can talk to your family about how they come to decide what's true and false. And if you can guide them on those things, they can choose for themselves whether they want to apply that to those other core beliefs. You're always safe when you're just talking about how do we know what's true.
See, so the main thing is when I did talk to my mom a little bit about this, which is why I called you guys, because now I'm like kind of regretful because I feel like she is the type of person I wouldn't want to know. And but the thing is the way I would talk to my mom about this is not based on whether it's true or not, but based on whether it's moral to her. Because even if it is true, I wouldn't follow the Christian God, and I just wouldn't, because there's so many things in the Bible I disagree with morally, like slavery and such like that. And I brought that up to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, even if this is true, I'm not going to try to convince you it's not true, because I also agree with you guys that it's quite impossible to convince it's not true, just like to convince it is. So I would be like, well, Mom, even if it's true, like, are you willing to, if God came down, right, and it was real, and he said, okay, go around raping people, like, would you do it because he's God? And, and my mom said no, so maybe I'm getting somewhere, but that's how I try to talk
Your
to
mom
her,
also probably would say that God would never do that. And then you end up having the conversation of, okay, well, let's get Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. Is God opposed to child sacrifice? Because if he is, and God comes along and tests Abraham by saying, sacrifice your kid, then the only correct answer from Abraham would have been like, I don't know who you are, but God is not a God that would ever ask for child sacrifice. So depart from me, foul spirit. But that wasn't the answer that Abraham gave. Abraham obeyed and went to go kill God until God intervened, which means God rewarded Abraham for thinking that God would ask him to kill his kid. God rewarded that as if it were the right answer, which means it's the right answer. You can't simultaneously say God is right always and that he rewarded a wrong answer, a fundamental answer from the person that's going to be the cornerstone of his representation on earth. That person needs to have a really good understanding of God. And if Abraham is convinced that God would ask you to sacrifice your kid, and God rewards Abraham for that belief must be true. There's no way around that. And the way Christians and Jews tell the story, and then God saw what was about to happen, and he sent an angel down, and the angel stayed Abraham's hand, just kept the knife from plunging into him, and everything was fine and glorious afterwards. Hang on. There's a fucking little kid here that was just taken out put on a stone altar by his dad and was about to stab him. And all of this would have been fine and good, but God decided to have mercy. If your mom goes down the road of God would never do that, how did she know what God would or wouldn't do? That said, you might be the worst person to have conversations with her about this. And so letting her know that you're open to it, but that it's not a requirement and that your love for her isn't contingent on whether or not you guys discuss that, those are the things that are more important. Not everything is a fucking call-in show where I get to be like, answer the question, Mom. I asked you, is God real? Yes or no? Yes or Mom? Yes or fucking Mom? Yes or no? Real life's messier than that. I only had that conversation that robustly with my mom one time, and we don't need to do that again. But on that note, Red, I hope you got some.
On the thumbnail.
Oh, we lost Red anyway.
Oh, shoot.
Well, apologies for losing Red, but thank you to Red and everybody else for calling in today. As a reminder, this is the Sunday show. I have been Matt Dillahunty and will continue to be as far as I know. Paulogia is my co-host today. What have you got going on? Where do we need to direct people?
Oh, just, making more videos, counter-apologetic videos, Paulogia on here on the YouTube, which I always enjoy. Hopefully you'll be on again soon, Matt.
I look forward to it. And for Matthew, we have not forgotten about you. Paulogia is right here. And so Paul agreed to moderate a debate between myself and a caller. We were going to try to do it in February. Schedules aren't permitting. I'm going to try to see if we can do it like on a Saturday on my channel here in March or whatever. We haven't forgotten about it. We definitely want to do it. It's both something that would be new for my channel, but also something we can cross promote here at the line. And I'd like to give somebody a shot. So we haven't forgotten. I don't want anybody to think I'm blowing somebody off. On that note, Ms. Arden, producer, thank you so much for being here and not burning down the house earlier with your chicken sandwich in the microwave. It turned out to be a good example. And I don't know, we got callers.
The instructions said 6 minutes, to be clear. I followed the instructions.
Oh, yeah, no, it wasn't your fault at all.